Absolutely, yeah. We've got relays coming up this week. We've got a loaded visit weekend for Texas as well.
Yeah, we'll start with the Elite 11 event, and then we'll talk the two 7-on-7 tournaments I went to. But Kavian Bryant, what can you tell us about him?
Kevin Bryant looked good. You can tell that he's a basketball star with the way that his feet move, and really the velocity that he has. I think it's when you see him throw a football, it's not like, oh, there's a couple dual sport guys, whether they're baseball or basketball, where you're like, oh, he's throwing it like he would throw a basketball or a baseball. Kevin Bryant is a true football player and a true basketball player, but he uses those two, the skills in those sports to really craft his game. And had a chance to talk to him, after we wrapped up there. Um, he's waiting for that Texas offer. I didn't want to put it as plainly, but that is a guy who would really love if Texas, saw him one or two more times, and then he's able to report that offer. I think this is someone that that could very end up staying in state, whether it's with the Longhorns or the Aggies. A&M is heavily involved already. Seems like if he wanted to end it all today, then he could go and make that commitment to Texas A&M. He's not going to end it all today, though. He's going to take his time. He's going to wait for Texas to see him throw at some point later in the spring, and he will likely be back in June to do the same thing. So saw him. I saw Weston Nielsen a little bit for some reason. I don't think he was with the same group that we were really watching the whole time. The first with Kavian Bryant and Diabell. The first with Diabell and a lot of the other 26s, and then the second with Kavian Bryant, with Peyton Houston, with Malachi Ziegler, and a couple other, stud 27s. So that's what I'll get to next is Malachi Ziegler. Is a name.
Sorry, with Bryant. So he's a 2027 top 100 quarterback in the 27 cycle. An elite football player. This kid has more basketball offers than he's football offers right now. And he averaged I think it was like 33.5 points per game as a sophomore on the hardwood. Like truly an elite high school basketball player that is a Power 4 college basketball prospect. But the thing is, he's about 6'1", 6'2", and while he is a very good college basketball player, in all likelihood, he's playing in Europe if he chooses to, make basketball his number one sport. Because of him being a quarterback and a point guard, that is I just struggle to see that happening in college. You can't be a serious program and have your quarterback missing spring ball and parts of the late fall because he's in basketball. That does not work, right? So I do think eventually he's going to have to make a decision on focusing on one sport, either before college or after his freshman or sophomore year. Usually when schools let guys do dual sport stuff, I think Jonah Williams is the exception. I do not think this is what will happen with him. But usually when schools let guys do dual sport stuff, they let them try it for a year, and then eventually they're like, all right, buddy, let's get serious. You're playing football now. You're not doing track anymore like Brennan Thompson, or you're not playing basketball anymore. You're going to do football, right? And with Kavian Bryant, like I said, I think, chances are higher than not he's playing in Europe and not in the NBA if he does basketball. Where in football, he's like the number 5 QB in the country and can make more NIL money as a quarterback sitting on the bench redshirting as a freshman than he would ever make in Europe. So I do think eventually if he had to pick, it's going to be football. There are some people who think it will be basketball right now and that he likes basketball more, but he's far off from having to make that decision. But just something to, keep in mind for the future. And he actually is supposed to be at Texas Relays this week. Texas usually will have a few guys who are running the relays come across campus and visit. And Kavian Bryant has not – I can't find anywhere he's run track this year, and he's currently listed as a sub on Palestine Westwood's 4x400 team, which I do not think he runs. So that being said, I think there is some sneaky stuff going on potentially, and he's, getting down to the relays so we can get over to Texas. So I know he's scheduled to be at the elite camp. He's on a throw in front of Sark and Milwee then, but could potentially get some face-to-face time, this weekend as well. So an awesome prospect and another awesome 2027 quarterback prospect Texas has yet to offer is Malachi Ziegler, like you said, out of Benson, Louisiana.
Yeah. Malachi Ziegler, like you said, Benton, Louisiana, another guy who is in our top 100 in the class of 2027, another quarterback. I believe he's number 4 or number 5 in the nation right now. And, the offer sheet is not loaded right now for Malachi Ziegler. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Baylor, Arkansas are the couple, that have been standing out so far. But Malachi Ziegler is not just paying attention on the schools that have offered. USC has come along, and he's been very happy to talk with them. I think he's already been in Los Angeles. He's headed up to Ann Arbor, and he has been talking with AJ Milwee and a couple people at Texas about the possibility of him, potentially throwing for Texas at some point this spring, whether that's, like I said, in the spring, or he's also flirted with the idea of coming up in June. Malachi Ziegler is my favorite quarterback prospect on the class of 2027. I've been able to see him twice now in person, at Elite 11 this past weekend in Del Valle, and then last month in Dallas, or in Melissa, for the Under Armour Dallas Regional. And I think Malachi Ziegler does it all. I think he's got the size. He's already pretty well built, and as a guy that's currently a sophomore, has a lot more time to grow into the frame that, a lot of schools would like him to. But put some air on that ball. He's got some speed. Coming off a leg injury, we'll see how much, he really keeps. But he's mobile, and he knows how to work in the pocket.
True dual threat.
True dual threat. And
Kavian
same thing with
Bryant.
Bryant. Yeah. So Malachi Ziegler, if Texas is going to offer another quarterback, I think this should be the one. And we'll see if Colton Nussmeier, ends up being that name. But with Peyton Houston, not really thinking about ending things, making a commitment anytime soon. And we'll see how that changes as some pressure gets on him in the summer. And we always see that, with rising juniors, quarterbacks committing after we didn't expect them to. If Peyton Houston doesn't go ahead and, commit to the Horns, I think we're looking at 2 or 3 more quarterback offers. And I think that, Malachi Ziegler should be the first one. If he is, that's another question. But walked away from Del Valle on Saturday thinking this is probably the best quarterback prospect in the class of 2027.
Wow. Elijah Haven did not go to that, did he?
He did not. Yeah, that is our number 1 player in the class of 2027. Number 1 overall, I believe. I know he debuted there. He's still the number 1 overall. Also out of the state of Louisiana. Louisiana has 3 just stud quarterbacks in the 27 class between Haven, Ziegler, and Peyton Houston. And they're all pretty familiar with each other. And Malachi Ziegler and Peyton Houston actually won the accuracy challenge on Saturday. They tied, I think it was 25 out of 30, where, it's pretty basic accuracy challenge, hit some targets. And they were standing next to each other and giggling a little bit. And now they realize that they're, if they both want to go to Texas, only one of them can be there. So that'll be kind of a fun storyline to watch in the summer if Texas does get involved with Malachi Ziegler. But also just really cool that the boot has 3 complete studs at quarterback.
I don't know how much longer. So the main names to know outside of Peyton Houston, he's the only one that currently holds an offer that's uncommitted. There's one other 27 QB they've offered, Brady Edmonds, but he committed to Ohio State. Texas is not going to get him. So name to know, Peyton Houston, the guys they have not offered that are currently scheduled to be at the June 1st elite camp, or I don't know if it's June 1st this year, whatever the first Saturday is of June, that's usually when they do the elite camp. But Kavian Bryant, Palestine Westwood, Malachi Ziegler, Benton, Louisiana, Colton Nussmeier, Flower Mound Marcus. And there's a chance Phillip Rivers' son, Gunnar Rivers, who's from Fairhope, Alabama, in the Mobile area, is there as well. So going to be a pretty big event. I do think another offer will probably go out. Like you said, Peyton Houston, he doesn't want to commit until around this time next year, early spring next year. So there's a lot of time there. I do think an offer will end up going out. And another thing, that's interesting. Nussmeier and his brother, they only ever gone to school at Flower Mound Marcus. Or gone to high school at Flower Mound Marcus, I should say. Doug Nussmeier, their father, a longtime NFL quarterbacks coach, was with the Cowboys. That's why they got there. And then Kellen Moore hired him to the Eagles. He was the Eagles QB's coach last year, won a Super Bowl. Shout out, coach. And now he's the QB's coach and I think maybe co-OC for the Saints. Kellen Moore brought him over there. So could Nussmeier move the entire family to Louisiana potentially? Not sure. Colton does have, a year and a half left of high school. He will be an early enrollee, but something to monitor. And on the flip side of that, I've heard from several people there are schools in East Texas / DFW that are making a lot of efforts to get Peyton Houston to move and Malachi Ziegler to move. So if they end up at schools in East Texas or a DFW Metroplex powerhouse, you heard it here first. Another thing to monitor, Kavian Bryant, like I said, an elite basketball player, elite quarterback. It is a great package to have if you're trying to recruit a high school quarterback to your school. His father's also the head basketball coach at Palestine Westwood, and I believe the corners coach at Westwood. But in Palestine Westwood, not the Round Rock Westwood. But if someone were to hire his dad, give him a job, the whole family's likely to move. And then you get a 4-star quarterback and a 4-star point guard at your school. So there could be some movement there. If Malachi Ziegler does become an in-state QB or Peyton Houston does, could they be viewed differently, or at least by Texas fans potentially? But just something I thought was interesting. So, yeah. And I'm sure Antonio Cromartie does. He has doesn't he have 13 kids?
I remember they did a reality show for a year or two, but Steven, he corrected it. 27 quarterback Noah Spanks leaving Flower Mound for Summer Creek. I believe at Texas Junior Day in January, we had a couple minutes to talk to Drew Evers and his father.
Yeah.
And Drew Evers' dad was pretty high on Noah Spanks and spoke really, really highly of him. And, that goes a lot for parents of offensive linemen and offensive linemen themselves being complimentary of quarterbacks. But Noah Spanks was no slouch for Fairmount this past season. And, Summer Creek is now a perennial state semifinal appearance. So,
we'll say with Spinks too, is on the Texas radar to some degree. Not currently expecting him to go to the elite camp, but would not surprise me at all if he's there. Drew Evers actually received 2 coaching visits from Texas in January. Kyle Flood went and saw him, and then about a week later, A.J. Milwee was out there. A.J. Milwee was out there to go watch Noah Spinks and meet with him. They have not offered him. And then after his meeting, he went over and they called Drew Evers in the office. He had a 5-10 minute conversation with him, but he was there to see the QB. And since they've offered Evers, he went and saw him there as well. But just something to note, they're checking their bases and casting a wide net for quarterback in 2027. And I've said it, I think going back to next summer, I know Peyton Houston has an offer, but I don't think he ends up as the QB take. So we'll see what happens. But a lot of interesting stuff. One guy I want to ask you about, Jai Storm Knight. How is seeing him in person? For those who don't know, this is a 2028 Converse Judson offensive tackle. I talked about him a week or two ago, and he lists himself at 6'8", 345 pounds, and started as a freshman at Judson last year at the I know he played tackle, but I think it was right tackle for them. And already holds 10 offers, by the way, and is visiting Texas on Saturday.
Yeah, Jai Storm Knight is a freak. No one that young should be that big. 14 years old, 6'8", 340 pounds. And a lot of schools, like you mentioned, 10 offers already. And a lot of those are big name schools. Auburn, Nebraska, Tennessee, and then TCU, Tech, Utah are also in there among some Power 5 and, mid majors. And for very good reason. Jai Storm Knight has a ton of power. Just seemed very raw. And as a 2028 prospect, that's not an issue right now. He's still very young, like we mentioned, 14 years old. He's got a lot of time to, up his football IQ and just up his overall game apart from being much larger than just about anyone on that field, regardless of class. So I think, Texas has already been involved there. Kyle Flood has reached out and seems like they're kind of building a good relationship. Texas does not offer a lot of players, this early on, because it feels like the majority of our 27 offers have come within the last 2-3 months in the spring, apart from some, guys that have been known to just be complete studs from the time they stepped on a high school field. But Jystrom Knight will likely be one that Texas is in the mix for sooner rather than later, and one that we'll be covering for a very long time, because we haven't, assessed a lot of 28 prospects yet in the state. I can think of him, and I can think of Micah Rhodes, a running back out of Klein Oak, who I think is also on the same level, and could end up being, the number one running back in the country. Could end up being a major target for Texas. Grandfather Bobby Rhodes played at Texas in the 80s. So that'll be interesting to watch. Jystrom Knight will be very interesting to watch. The 2028 class already, some guys standing out here.
Yeah. Hey, Judson also has Jamari Bowens over there in 2028 freak show receiver basketball prospect. And the younger brother of Johnny Bowens, who's a top 247 lineman, signed with Oregon, transferred out of Eugene after a year. He's now at UTSA. But, fun little young group over there at Judson. One more guy I want to ask you about, Amari Vickerson, on pace to be one of the top D-line prospects in the state for 2027. His pops played at Michigan State and then in the NFL for a decent amount of time. So, I know his recruitment just getting started. It's in its infancy, but, how do you look as a player? And if he did say anything about his recruitment, what's the latest?
Hank talked to him, so I'm not exactly sure what he said about his recruitment. But Amari Vickerson is standing out, I think this is the time when guys who have Texas offers, who have A&M offers, who have those big offers within the region, that we take a look, much closer look at in these settings. And Amari Vickerson, I'm not going to say he won every one-on-one, but he held his ground. He looked damn good against some guards there, and not elite competition like we saw at Under Armour Dallas, but still, really showing off, the hand movement that he has, the power moves, and at 6'4", 290, obviously just the overall power. So it'll be nice to see how Amari Vickerson kind of progresses into this season in pads, and then after that, when his recruitment hang is getting to the end, we likely won't see him in a lot of these settings, but still, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, but there's also a lot of things to like early on.